Welcome. We are the Internal Audit Team Group F2, and today we will be discussing our P-card fraud analysis on Oklahoma State University. I'm Lindsay Reynolds, and I'm here with my team members Alejandra, Adetola, and Senthil. Our agenda for today is as follows. First, we'll review the business issue facing OSU. We will then discuss preliminary findings uncovered by our initial analyses. Next, we'll share additional audit analyses we performed, and we'll then provide a recommendation on the strength of OSU's internal controls on its P cards. Lastly, we'll communicate other areas OSU should further explore and the key takeaways from our findings. Oklahoma State University issues purchasing cards called P cards to certain authorized employees. And these P cards are business credit cards that permit those authorized employees to purchase necessary business-related goods and services, and it helps them outlay spending personal funds for business expenses. OSU should be instituting internal controls to limit both the types of purchases cardholders are able to make and also to avoid inefficient and fraudulent transactions. So as internal auditors, we're concerned with the actual effectiveness of OSU's internal controls in practice. Are OSU's controls working, or are the cardholders able to make fraudulent purchases with no recourse? Armed with the task of auditing all of OSU's P-card transactions for 2014, we performed various analyses in Python to search for transactions that violated OSU's purchasing policy. We summarized this data analysis and devised a few recommendations on how effective OSU's internal controls actually are. So first of all, we loaded and cleaned the data into usable form. We performed exploratory queries to get a sense of the data, such as most expensive transactions. We looked at transactions over the $5,000 limit, transactions spent in each merchant category code, et cetera. We also performed internal control testing to test for violations on OSU's existing internal controls. We looked at things like transactions greater than the limits on annual, monthly, and per transaction totals, and purchases that potentially split one purchase into one or more separate transactions. We then performed forensic tests to determine if fraud was suspected. We performed analyses like a Benford's Law analysis. We checked for duplicate transactions, and we looked at transaction totals and round number multiples to look for areas that indicated fraud and should therefore be further inspected. After these preliminary analyses, we then performed additional analyses in detail around spending limits, merchant category codes, and we took a closer look at prohibited purchases. And my colleagues Ade, Alejandra, and Senthil will walk us through those now.
Thank you, Lindsay. Now let's discuss the repeat offenders. Unlike the internal control test for, we worked with data for each year from 2011 to 2015 to find the number of violations of the daily spending limits of $5,000. We include all transactions, no matter how many times they occur. From our analysis, we found 1,122 potential violations, and we noticed that as the years go by, the violations reduced. 2011 has the highest potential violations of 587, while 2015 has none. Also, Clark C, Rupa A, and Stover C consistently violate the rules yearly. We also performed the same analysis for the full data set and found 122 potential violations of the 50,000 annual spending limits. From our analysis, we find that Clark C, Rupas A, and Stover C have violated both the 5,000 rule and the 50,000 annual spending rule. I'll now hand over to Alejandra to discuss sentiment analysis.
Thank you, Adetola. We also perform a sentimental analysis to analyze and understand the sentiments between the cardholder and the merchant category code. We wanted to know the top merchant category count, top word search, and the word frequency, so we could flag likelihood of fraud patterns based on the different store choices among the cardholders. As a result, stationery, office, and school supply stores appear on the data 62 times. The top most repeated words are stationery, office, school, supply, and stores. We concluded these words and merchant category code, it's not part of the prohibited purchases and is accurately with the profession the cardholders are in. However, further detailed analysis of this merchant category code will help us understand the patterns and analyze fraud in greater detail. Lastly, our model received a mean accuracy score of 99.9%. Now, Senthil will be presenting our findings for additional analysis 3.
Thanks, Ali. This is Senthil here. I'm going to discuss about prohibited purchases. University has provided guidance on list of prohibited purchases to all their employees. Our team did additional analysis based on merchant category code available in our dataset. Our analysis revealed university employees made various prohibited purchases using their P card, such as purchase of gasoline, gift cards, insurance, games, movies, casino, purchase of personal items, and many more. Detailed list of prohibited transactions can be found in our Python report.
Thank you, Senthil. Now we will be presenting 3 recommendations that we have for OSU. The first recommendation is to create and establish a detective control to ensure software identifies prohibited purchases by establishing a log code in the database to detect the prohibited purchases. Our second recommendation is to create a preventive control to conduct a periodic review to ensure the law codes in place are working consistently and properly. This will be done by establishing a self-assurance activity or quality assurance team to review the test sample of the data. And our last recommendation will be to establish a business rule matrix for P-card transactions with a clear definition and expectations for the prohibited purchases by creating a document repository that houses all the rules and procedures in an orderly manner. The effects of this is that these implementations will reduce financial risk and operational risk. Now, Senthil will be going over with you key takeaways as well as some additional analysis.
Thanks, Ali. Senthil again. To talk about additional data, if we had more information along with the card data that was provided, our team can do additional analysis such as transactions that are made from vendors who are not pre-authorized to bill and charge P-card. With a list of employees and their personal financial relationship with vendors, we can identify if any purchases are made from family or friends or from a company that is owned by university employees or from a companies where cardholders have financial interest. OSU has sales tax exemptions. Vendors should not be charging taxes on purchases. Card data has the total amount instead of split between base amount and taxes charged on purchases. Having a split of base amount and taxes will help us to analyze taxes charged in purchases. With the delivery address of purchase, we can analyze items purchased with P-card are always delivered to university address. If any exceptions, whether appropriate approvals are obtained from associate vice president and controller. Moving on. To summarize our audit finding, our analysis found number of violations are decreasing year over year. There are few cardholders who are consistently exceeding their spend limits. If it may be time for university to revisit their employee spend limit. Sentiment analysis highlights P-card is used more often for a few category of purchases. It may be time for university again to go for a direct purchase agreement instead of using a P-card. The university should also implement new detective control to reduce the risk of prohibited purchases made by their employees. We have also included few additional analysis in our appendix slides that will provide information for the university to improve P-card internal controls and fix violations. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate your opportunity to provide and share our analysis and recommendations. Looking forward to work with you again in the future. Thank you.